It is my great pleasure to introduce to you the MP for Hove, Mr. Peter Kyle.
That was the best introduction I've ever had in my life. Normally people sort of read my CV out, and so when someone says they start the introduction, I know I've got half an hour before I'm actually going to be on, so I can think about what I'm going to say. Thank you so much for inviting me here. I've not been to this pub for a long time. I used to live in Viaduct Road, just over the way, when I was a student, because everyone who's been a student has lived in Viaduct Road at one point in their lives. And I had some incredible times living just over the way there, and probably made everybody else's life hell over here. So, look, we're here because of the European Union and our love of internationalism and our love of the connection that we have to the continent. It's a really great thing that you're meeting like this and you meet here so regularly, because for me, who is as emotional about what the European Union delivers in terms of the freedoms we enjoy as citizens, in terms of our freedom for our economy and the economic benefits, and our emotional connection to that relationship. And for me, day in, day out, sometimes in a very lonely way, trying to fight and make sure that the voice is heard for people who care about that relationship and trying to preserve what is wonderful about that relationship. It's great to be in a room full of people who have a celebratory edge to the campaign as we move forward, because so often it's very easy to get caught up in the negativity around the debate, because the whole European debate from its outset has been a negative debate, because we allowed people with a negative agenda, in fact an agenda which sought always to divide people and not unite people, to lead the way in the debate about Europe and the referendum. For me, I felt so passionately about this relationship that I wasn't going to leave it to anyone. I became the lead MP for the southeast of England. I'd only been an MP for 3 or 4 minutes when the referendum was called. But I became the lead MP for the southeast of England when the referendum was called. And that meant me and Chris over here, who's standing in front tapping away on his phone, we set our own campaign up and we fundraised for our own campaign. We got our own battle bus, we got our own team of volunteers, and we visited every single coastal town from Dover to the Isle of Wight. And we energised teams in every one of those coastal towns. We learned a huge amount about what people are saying. We're in a bit of a bubble in Brighton and Hove. You only have to move 100 yards out to the east and west to hear a very different set of messages. And those are experiences I brought back into politics after the referendum, because we need to learn the lessons if we're going to unite people to move forward. Because what I don't want to do is win the arguments that need to be won going forward in the same way that people who won the argument around the referendum did. We need to take people with us on this journey and not do it in a way which is divisive. But I did put my heart and soul into it, and that included going to Dover 3 times, because it became a fascination for me about what people were saying about the EU, what they were saying about Britain and the world that they were living and experiencing. And I'll just tell you one anecdote, because it's such an illustrative one of that campaign. And that was, we were standing on a very wet day in Dover High Street, and a lady came up to me, and she was formidable. She was in her 70s, she was carrying shopping bags, and she just came up to me and said, "I know who you are. Can you tell me one reason why I should vote Remain?" And I said to her, "Well, just today, madam, 8 Nobel Prize winners have said that it is right and correct and the right thing to do to remain in the EU." I said, "These are people who just know so much." And she said, "What do they know about life?" And I did what everyone here has just done, and I laughed, because it is such a funny expression to say in response to that statement. But when I was not in the car on the way home, with my team in the battle bus, I sort of said aloud, what does a Nobel Prize winner in economics know about life in Dover in 2017? And it's a lesson that we've really got to learn in our politics, in our discussion, because that's a question that we've really got to answer in the right way going forward if we are going to unite people and take people on this journey of where we go next. I also did a TV debate with Nigel Farage in Dover with a studio audience from Dover, and it's something that, I mean, look, I really took a hit for the team. What I'm trying to explain to you is I care that much about this thing. And in the 2 years that I've been an MP, it's been quite a 2 years. And with two general elections, the referendum, 2 leadership elections in my own party, and all of the fallout from all of those sorts of events, and we've kind of landed where we are now. And we find ourselves in a period where I think after the referendum, which was such a shock result for both big major political parties, and the governing party took the decision that it would try and keep up with this sort of burst of energy that came out of the referendum. This stunning, shocking result catapulted the public mood forward. And I get the sense that government has been trying to keep up with where the public were at the point of the referendum ever since. And yet, the public have shifted its position. And the public has shifted its position in lots of different ways, in a very sophisticated, in a very diverse set of ways. Its views on free movement have moved in one direction or have solidified, but its view on trade, on travel, on tourism, on food standards, on air quality, have shifted in very, very different ways as well. But government is still hurtling towards where the public was in June last year. And that really worries me, because in this election we've just had here, Theresa May made this election about, give me the strong mandate I want, that she broke the cardinal rule of politics. She made it about her rather than about the public and what the country needs. And the country was unequivocal in what it said back to her, and that's no, you can't have it. But what it said was, we are not going to get the strong mandate to negotiate for the referendum. And they are still ploughing on as if they still have this strong mandate, which they no longer have. And we, as a political party, from my party and politics in general, has got to wake up to that, because the public mood has changed. The things that I can say in social media, in public, on TV, in the media, has changed profoundly in the last 2 months. I am now saying things with a boldness, with a clarity of language, with an intent that I simply couldn't have said 6 months ago. There is a space now for a balanced debate about where this is heading that we couldn't have had before. I'm no longer called, for example, a traitor for saying, are we sure we're doing the right thing anymore? I couldn't have said that. Well, when I was saying it 6 months ago, the backlash was absolutely huge. And for me, it comes down to a couple of fundamental questions. The first is the same question that was posed during the referendum. If we are going to move the most precious thing we have as a country, which is our economy, and we're going to uproot it and move it to a new destination, isn't it incumbent on the people who are going to move our economy to tell us where the destination is before we head out on the journey? Well, we are now halfway into that journey, and they still are incapable of telling us where we're heading.
Chlorinated American chicken.
But chlorinated American chicken is something that I was bizarrely talking about 6 months ago. And I'm sure that all of you follow my Facebook page. And you'll know that I went 7 or 8 months ago up onto the Sussex Downs to meet sheep farmers. The sheep farmers asked to see me. And sheep farmers asked to see me to talk about the meat industry and the sheep industry here in Sussex. But what was really important about why they wanted to see me wasn't about meat exports, it was about meat standards. And they said to me that they explained to me, and I saw the lambs in lambing season, And they talk to me about how the effort that goes into keeping meat quality so high, the highest in the world within the EU. And then at the end of it, they said, but we're not here to talk to you about our exports. We're here to talk to you about what will happen to our meat standards if we do a deal with America that includes meat importation into this country. In other words, we're here because we don't want our kids eating that crap. That was what they wanted to talk about, not their ability to sell in their own industry. They were worried about the food their kids were going to eat. And being meat producers, they knew better than anyone else what the implications were. So this is where we are. It's a really difficult place to be. There is a change of mood in the country. The country now wants a really reasoned debate. It's felt like Brexit was going to happen at some distant point in time. But now, most people, most residents, most members of the public, a lot of people up and down the country now see it on the horizon, hurtling towards them. If we are going to exit the European Union, in March 2019, it's going to take a year before that date to ratify it with all of the other member states. That means negotiations have got to be wrapped up just after Christmas to enable that process of going to all European parliaments to start. And we are not even one step down this mile-long journey of negotiations. So we are in a very difficult time. There are MPs from across the House who feel very passionately about this. Me in Labour, you all know, I don't have to explain to you my voting record. I suspect most people here know how strongly I feel about this, to the point where I'm from time to time going against my own party to try and encourage them to go further. But as with every vote in the House of Commons, it's yes, no. You don't get the chance to sort of hide and duck one out and sit it out. But if I have the opportunity to assert Britain's membership on things like the single market, our relationship with the European Union, for me it always starts with what's in the best interests of the community that elected me, and I simply cannot see, in a city like ours with 8.5 million visitors, with 2 universities, with an economy that sells more to the continent than it does to any other city in the country, the idea of uprooting that without any idea what's going to replace it, or any of the certainties that are going to come next, then I can't, in all conscience, allow that to happen. So that's where I stand. I'm very happy to answer any questions. I can see a hand up already. And if there's anything I can answer, I'll do my very best. So thank you for inviting me.
I would just say that I think it's very clear where Theresa May wants to go, which is America, with Liam Fox, who was a part of Atlantic Bridge, which was I'm sure you know.
I'm very aware, yeah.
And Liam Fox has big intros into the Trump regime. And I have a feeling that everything is going to be up for grabs, because America is the place for Theresa May. So you're going to say goodbye to the welfare state, you're going to say goodbye to the NHS. And I think America she's looking upon it as her saviour. I really do.
Yes, so I think that there's certainly no doubt that in the government front benches you've got people like Michael Gove, David Davis, and particularly Liam Fox, who are Atlanticists, who have always treasured the relationship with America far more than any other. Liam Fox did set a charity up called the Atlantic Bridge, which incidentally was declared corrupt by the Charity Commission and wound up. One of only 4 charities that year which was wound up.
It was, they were fined and paid for by an American billionaire.
Right. So, but I think Theresa May is not one of those. I just don't think Theresa May, ironically considering the straplines that we used during her election campaign, is strong enough to stand up to her own dynamics in the party. What is not spoken about is just how deep the European issue runs through the Conservative Party. I've got no doubt that whichever way this goes, if this goes all the way through to conclusion, and we do leave, and all of us, will realise this will have profound, jarring implications, because this isn't just about economy, this is actually about fairness. Yes. This is about how we as a country express our values as a country, how we protect ourselves as a country. We've used the European Union to spread liberty, freedom, fairness, economic and social fairness, not just within our own country, but using other countries to do so, around a continent, and then to bring them back and use it as a foundation, a way to protect our nation from uncertainty and periods of instability. And these are things which we are now going to feel the impact of, because those people who are driving this have a laissez-faire attitude, not just economically but socially as well. And that is where the divisions within the Conservative Party will emerge if this goes through to conclusion. And then conversely, if we do manage to pull back from the brink, that will have eruptions which will be huge. Now, you are going to need a very powerful leader to hold that kind of coalition together, and she is not it, I'm afraid. So,
first of all, thank you for your speech. It's really encouraging to hear that. What I'm concerned about is whether you would agree with the notion that it's actually John McDonnell in the Labour Party that is the ideological block for Labour changing its public position on membership of the single market and the customs union. And if so, how are you and MPs like yourself within the Labour Party going to change that position?
I've spoken to most of the front bench repeatedly about this issue. We, from the very moment the referendum result came in, it's been very difficult to figure out what steps you take forward today that are going to lead you strategically to where you want to be, because there's a lot of issues. From a politician's point of view, the divides that emerged around the country were profound. They spanned generations. There was a generational challenge, there was a geographical challenge, there was the constitutional issue, which actually was quite profound. The only referendum I want to have again is one that outlaws referendums.
Absolutely.
Because there was no constitutional basis for it. And the implications as an MP, because our constitutional settlement is that I represent my community that elected me, I go to London to protect their interests. But when the country does a referendum and says something different to the community that elected you, then the Constitution has nothing to say about that. And because referendums are quite a recent addition to our landscape. General elections have a constitutional basis because you elect on a manifesto, which does have a constitutional grounding.
But you still can vote and it doesn't turn out the way you want it, right?
You can change that.
Yeah, so exactly, and then every
You
but
can't change this.
exactly. So all I'm saying is there's so much uncertainty that it was very difficult for those of us who care passionately about this issue to find a way forward that could unite people and put us back from the brink, particularly for the first bit of the debate where it was so dominated by migration that we couldn't talk about. I'm on the Business Select Committee, which is looking at Customs Union, it was looking at Euratom, because I'm on the energy side as well. What is about to happen is so profound to the energy that lights our homes, which in this city, incidentally, 40% of which comes across the interconnectors from France, which is so complex, and we're about to remove ourselves from the treaty, which is about the coding, which decides and monitors and regulates the power that moves across the channel, and the gas that moves across the channel. It is so deep and so complex what we're about to do.
In the end, the numbers are with you
Yeah.
in terms of your voters. Over 70% of Labour's voters are Remainers, or would support membership. Of the
I know all of this.
You know the figures now.
Yeah.
What baffles a lot of us who are still campaigning for us to remain in the European Union is why Labour isn't shifting its market position.
Absolutely.
Well, look, it's music to my ears to hear pressure from this, because normally I'm in audiences where the pressure is from the other direction. I've spoken to John McDonnell about it, I've spoken to Jeremy Corbyn about it, I've made my views very, very clear.
And Seamus Mill?
I've not spoken to Seamus Mill about it. But I think that, look, it's obvious that I think my party is in the wrong place when it comes to single market and the end place. No, I'm not. I don't know where the source within the party of the resistance to moving across is. Keir and I speak an awful lot about this. We speak on the phone about it, we're texting each other and we meet up. Our offices are a couple of doors apart from each other. I sense there is movement in the right direction here. There is a growing number of MPs here. For me, this is an issue that's so profound that had my community been a Leave community, I would still be doing what I'm doing now, and I would have put my own career on the line for it, because what we're going through is going to change everything. This is going to be the biggest threat to the values I went into politics for in the first place. So it runs very, very deep. The public is moving. For those of you who are of the left and have been, have identified yourselves as being a member of the Labour Party, then you need to make your voices heard.
We vote Green.
Okay, fine. No. So what I'm saying is that the one thing that I think that Jeremy and others in the leadership of the Labour Party have talked about is about democratising, the party more and more and more. I want that to start with listening to what the party is saying about Europe at the moment, because 80% of the party want to remain in the single market, 70% want to remain in the EU. So I think there is, there's a lot to work on there. All I can say is that there's a growing number of MPs who are open to that debate now that weren't 6 months ago. We talk an awful lot about it. There's a lot of activity over the summer, and I'm hoping that we can use that kind of growing spread of groundswell of support that we have within Labour for it to be heard.
But you'll know we're having a rally here for the Labour Party conference in September. Yeah. We're organising this. We hope to be able to come there and put some pressure on people to show a bit of backbone and get behind this.
Good. I'll see you there.
We're going to come and see you tomorrow afternoon. We've got an appointment.
Have you?
Yeah.
Right, I might be sick tomorrow. So actually, there's hands up over here. So you go ahead.
Do you think that the will of the people, the so-called will of the people, will change as the economy continues to tank and what they voted for comes home to them?
So Tony asked about is it going to take the economy to tank before public opinion changes? I think that the seeing and feeling and the impact of Brexit is there's no doubt in my mind that is going to get people to. It will stun individuals, it will stun communities when they see just how many of the businesses who are employing people are making contingency plans to leave and can now make that decision very, very rapidly. There's no doubt that will change opinion, but from my perspective, that's the wrong way of looking at it. I want to inspire people to want to stay. I don't want to scare people into thinking they've made the wrong decision, because that's not. I don't think as politicians we should be just following the public all the time. We need to be leading the public, and we need to play a much greater leadership role on the Remain side, because it's the politicians who have been so anti-European and so divisive who have been leading public opinion. And I think we have got a great story as to why the role of the European Union. We've got a great story about what our internationalist Britain has delivered in terms of fairness and wealth to our country, and stability and influence for our country. That is the story that we need to inspire people to want to stay. That is the way that we can do it in a way which will lead to a more sustainable future and not just constant acrimony. So I do think that as we move towards Brexit, more people are going to be scared and stunned by what's happening. I just hope we can win the arguments between now and then more convincingly than we are now.
It's going to need very senior leadership,
Of course it will.
and it doesn't seem to be coming from anyone.
I agree with you. Look, I'm not here to tell you that we are. There is. So let me just explain what. There is a leadership vacuum when it comes to Brexit. There are certain people who, when they do come out and speak, we're still talking about what they say a week later, and that's a great thing for me because it creates a space for this debate. But look, I'm not here to sugarcoat what we're facing. You know, I have never regretted going into politics when I was in my 40s because I wanted to bring the experience I had before as an aid worker and an academic and all the rest of it into it. But I really regret that I don't have the gravitas that comes with having been an MP for 10 or 15 years and the experience you have in the media and in the chamber and around the PLP and working with all these other MPs. Because my God, we need people who've got gravitas, experience and status to start. Well, look, I wish Jeremy would be for the single market. I wish Jeremy would lead us, absolutely for where we're going. I'm trying, but what I'm not going to go into politics for is to wish other people will do it. What I'm trying to do is do the best I absolutely can myself to do as much as I possibly can. So I'm here.
Why do you? I am one of those weird people who are very in favour of Jeremy Corbyn. I think what he stands for is what I stand for, but also I'm very pro-EU. I don't understand. Could you put to me why you think Jeremy Corbyn is pro-Brexit?
I can't.
Okay.
I can't.
Can I just say?
No, so actually, there's people who haven't had their hands up before.
Well, probably because he's a Democrat and it's been democratically voted for. So, and that would probably be his argument. It's been democratically decided. So if there's not going to be a second referendum, if you don't want to be against the, I mean, shouldn't you be pushing for a cross-party approach to Brexit? That Brexit is going to happen, and pushing for things like workers' rights, human rights, being protected, not just wiping away the Human Rights Charter, and pushing for a more cross-party approach to leaving the EU, which wouldn't actually be the end of life as we know it if we did.
Well, I'll just two things. Firstly, the bedroom tax was won in an election, and I opposed it, and I'm going to try and get that scrapped as well. So, the Tory manifesto has been elected in the last 2 general elections. I oppose that manifesto. That was democratically elected. Democracy does not mean that when you lose the argument in an election, you stop fighting for what you care about and believe about, and so forth. The same goes for the referendum. The same goes for the referendum as it does for a general election, because I'm a Democrat. And secondly, when you say the world as we know it isn't going to end, it is.
Okay.
The world as well as we know it.
Life will carry on.
Well, great.
Life will carry on, but I want to make sure life carries on moving in the right direction. That means increasing.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Human rights.
Exactly. Okay. So that's why I believe the EU is a great vehicle for those things. So, has anyone?
Not for the refugees.
People who haven't asked questions first.
We often hear about hard Brexit, soft Brexit.
Not for Greece.
And more recently, no
Catalan.
Okay, everyone. Next.
One at a time.
What are the chances for a no Brexit?
So the question is, we've got a hard Brexit, soft Brexit. What's the chances of a no Brexit? I'm so kind of emotionally wrapped up in this that whenever I'm asked this question, it depends how much sleep I've had the night before as to what the answer is. There's been, straight after the referendum, I couldn't conceive that it would go through. 6 months later, I couldn't conceive how there was so much momentum behind Brexit. I couldn't see the way forward as to how we were going to come back from the brink. But now, particularly since this general election, the public mood has changed, the mandate the government has for Brexit has changed, and now the realisation, as each round of negotiations go forward, and the government come back empty-handed, and it is very, very clear that Europe is not dominated by Brexit. Europe is dominated by their economy. Just last week, a new trade deal was signed with Japan. The European project is rolling on without Britain. It's only Britain that is obsessed with Brexit. And I think that is something which is now more broadly being accepted and understood by Britain. We are going to be dominated for the next 10 years in our legislative programme dealing with the fallout for Brexit, while America, China, India and the rest of the European Union are moving forward. And I think that is something we need to, people need to understand more. So I think the chances of no Brexit have increased significantly since the election, but I'd be amazed if it was more than 15 or 20%, in my honest truth. Go ahead, and then you.
So you said that you weren't interested in any other referendum, but won't it take another referendum, at least on the terms of Brexit, or another choice for the people to speak? Because so far we just keep hearing the people have spoken, and 48% of the people also spoke, they're being ignored. And yet you're saying public mood has changed. A lot of 16-year-olds who would have, in 2 years' time, been able to vote, would very likely, given the research that I've understood has been done, also vote to remain. So if by then the mood has changed so much, why would we just fall off the edge of a cliff if most people, how can we decide if not to another referendum unless there was another general election? Can you briefly
Yeah, so the question is about what mechanism could we, would exist. I said earlier I don't want another referendum, but so the question is, what mechanism could exist to roll back from this? And also about young people. I mean, I've just introduced last week a piece of legislation because I won in the ballot to introduce legislation to enfranchise 16, 17-year-olds. I think this is just one of those issues that makes you realise that having such a disempowered group of young people this is one of the expressions of having such a disempowered group of young people that we have in this country. But I think in terms of what is likely to lead, I mean, we have a very, very weak and vulnerable government. It has no working majority. It is in a coalition which is not entirely stable. I think the most likely way forward is that the government could be shaken apart by Brexit. When Brexit negotiations go wrong, when the media finally turn against the government, what the media will turn against isn't Brexit itself, but it'll turn against the incompetence of a government. That could shake the government apart very, very quickly, because all it takes is that DUP arrangement to fall and the government falls. All it takes is them to lose a vote involving finance. We've only voted 3 times since the election. I've gone 10 days as an MP in Parliament without having a vote because the government aren't calling any votes because they're too scared of voting at the moment. So it's a very fragile government. I think the most likely scenario is that the negotiations will fall or fail, public mood will change, something will trigger a general election, and it will then be the manifesto of the parties which will decide the way forward, because they do have constitutional grounding. Now, that I feel is the way forward, and I suspect it might include a second referendum. But I've got to be honest with you. I'm pretty good as a politician at judging, what pathways take us to what destination, and what it takes, what step you move in the morning, and what you do that day that's going to help you get somewhere. But as I look forward, I can't see more than 2 steps forward in any direction and where it will take us.